crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.
Hi guys, this is Matt, and last night I saw a film at Heartland Film Festival called ReEntry, and I'm here with the filmmakers behind it. We've got director Brendan Choisnet.
Brendan Choisnet, yeah.
Brendan Choisnet, and writer, screenwriter?
Daniel Nayeri.
There we go. And of course, I'm Matt Hurt, if you guys don't know. Last night was your guys' world premiere for ReEntry. And ReEntry, for the audience, is a sci-fi romance drama where... Do you want to give the log line or the elevator pitch for it?
Sure, yeah. It's a grounded sci-fi about a woman whose husband is lost in a lab accident and only to return a year later. So for her, it's been the worst year of her life, right? She's mourned him, she's gone to the funeral, all that. But for him, when he returns, it's only been 10 seconds of his life. So it's about the marriage of, and just any long-term relationship wherein one person has sort of experienced a profound change. And how do they negotiate that? Of course, that's all wrapped in the kind of the sci-fi premise where these are the early days of multiverse theory. So he is an ex-astronaut, and he has been sort of hired to come in for the very first, like, one small step for man experiment of walking through this door, and he's supposed to just come back immediately, and it's just going to gather some data. But unfortunately, as I said, he disappears for a whole year. And so his wife, who was reluctant the whole time for him to go in the first place, is, dealing with a year of grief and then a sudden, a reemergence of this relationship and trying to figure out how to piece it all back together.
Well said. And I will say I really enjoyed the movie. I loved it. Last night I got to see it at the world premiere. And for the viewers at home, it is screening also on Monday at Glendale here in Indianapolis, and it is screening virtually throughout the festival throughout October 20th. Something I want to kind of talk about. I'm not going to grill you guys too hard on the specifics of the movie or anything, but the thing that I kind of came away from with it was that, really from the word go, I just recognized this is my kind of movie. This is like a science fiction movie that the sci-fi elements of it are the backdrop. That's like the jumping off point for this incredible meditation on this relationship, this marriage between these two people who are suddenly finding themselves to be slightly changed, and how those changes can just kind of exacerbate their relationship and how they're affected by those changes. And I just think that that's just such a beautifully well-told story, the way that you guys were able to just kind of go through that. Even small details when Ellie, she is trying to get him to stay. That's communicating, obviously, she doesn't want him to go. But even with the jump, I don't want to, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the place that she's at, mentally when he comes back is clearly it's subtle, but it's she's starting to process moving on, and she's starting to finally kind of heal. And then this kind of happens, and it rocks her world, it changes everything. And I just think that is such a great kind of jumping off point for this story about these two people who are different but are versions of each other's soulmates, basically. I don't know. I don't have a question there. I just wanted to say I thought that was beautifully done.
Credit there also goes to Emily Deschanel, who, the easy version of that is, my husband was gone for a year and now he's back. Oh, it's just like a surprise birthday party. How great. Right. And in fact, it's actually, when you sort of take the time to think about it, you said it really well. When those wounds are starting to heal, reopening them can be, have a mixed bag. There can be, people often have these sort of ambivalent feelings, even when of course it's a good thing, of course. And in fact, they start to feel guilty that they even have those ambivalent feelings. And I think in the first couple scenes, you really see that on her face. She doesn't say any of what we've just said, but you see it. She runs to him. She, is overjoyed, and then also maybe feeling like maybe she should have known he was going to come back, but that makes no sense. How could you have known the whole time? So should she have grieved? Should she have gotten over it? Feeling guilty, feeling sort of mixed in that way is all kind of, I mean, we handed that to her and said, like, good luck, I couldn't do it. That is a very complicated set of emotions, and she sort of delivers it in so many unspoken ways. And I thought, yeah, she did an amazing job.
Yeah, her performance is incredible. Her and Sam Trammell. I'm always wary of mispronouncing names, but yeah, their performances like that, their connection, and as it's being kind of explored, is like those two actors together are just incredible on screen. So I think that's just, thank you so much. Yeah, that was one of the many highlights of it. Were even like there are at least one or two time lapses that is just showing them kind of being together, and it's just like that kind of montage, it communicates a lot, and just seeing them together in that way, knowing like what we know as the audience and what they know deep down, is really powerful, just the imagery of that. And I also want to talk, I know I'm kind of going all over the place, but I also really want to talk about just the visual style of we'll have to kind of traverse spoilers here, but the visual style of the kind of conflicting memories and the way that you guys showed the two sides of the memories and how it demonstrates the difference between these people in their alternate versions and everything. I thought that was just really elegant and really communicated a ton. And I wanted to ask, like, as an independent film, like, were there challenges with getting that visual style? Were there different like versions of it or different ideas that you guys had to kind of work through on an independent budget, or how did that kind of come about?
That's a great question. I think that, we're my background as a filmmaker is I've been making commercial content for the last 20 years, and so I've had the blessing of having some really long-time collaborators, both on the cinematography side in Peter Fackler, and then also our visual effects supervisor, Adam Brown, who actually started my commercial company with me 20 years ago. So I think that from the beginning, when I read the first drafts of Dan's screenplay, first of all, he did a great job of laying out kind of what the idea is, and so it really was fun to kind of piece out and parse and figure out how we're going to do it. And in many ways, the visual effects, I was lucky because we have these long-standing relationships, and Peter and Adam and I have all worked together on projects before, and so we were able to kind of port over some of the technology we had used on a previous commercial, and so we had experience and a shorthand and, quite frankly, learnings from using that. Sure. that allowed us to, I think, do something a little more ambitious than would typically be possible on an indie film budget. Yeah.
Wow. Well, the finished product is beautiful. It comes across really well, really beautiful. I also wanted to ask about location scouting and stuff, not to get too in the weeds about that, but like there's a couple of scenes in particular that I thought were just very visually striking in terms of where they were set. The one is the kind of one of the aforementioned memory sequences where there's that like beautiful lighthouse and the water and everything. Like when you're shooting like an independent film, when you're making an independent film, like how does that kind of factor into like difficulties of finding places and finding the right place for the right scene? And I don't know if you could kind of talk on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, one of the number one things with shooting a film for me is what is the environment that it's in, and how can you make something, especially, a lot of independent films are going to be shot in Los Angeles, mm-hmm. They're going to be shot in New York. And we shot in the shoreline of Connecticut. I work out of New York City, but I live up that way, and there's a real opportunity when you make films outside of the major sort of hubs, because there's quite frankly an excitement, right, from from the community to be a part of something that it doesn't come through every day, right? When I lived in New York, you'd be annoyed because your block would be shut down, right? And you didn't have a place to park. But in Connecticut, people are excited, and so there's really a communal atmosphere that comes with it, and that I think actually translated into our entire production, not just on screen, but just even the experience off screen when we had dinners together and things like that. I want to specifically thank, though, one of the line producer on our film, Russ, who found the lighthouse and the carousel, and that he mentioned. He's a New Haven native, and we shot in and around the shoreline of Connecticut, which is near New Haven, and he pointed that out. We had another place in mind. When I had sort of a place in mind, and he's like, well, no, check this out. And he was absolutely right. And it completely made that scene so much richer and deeper, more beautiful than it could have been. And I think that, he wasn't the location guy. He was our line producer, right? But that's a lot of what independent filmmaking is about, is when you have the opportunity to work with people that are putting on every hat and all just kind of trying to row in the same direction.
Yeah, well said. That's one of the things that attracts me to covering independent films, and things like Heartland Film Festival is just I'm in Indianapolis. This is not a haven for filmmaking or anything. It's not New York or LA, but I love that we have Heartland Film Festival. There's the Indianapolis Film Festival. Indie Shorts is part of Heartland as well. That's short films. I just love that kind of environment and that independent spirit and everything. And on that note, I'm again going to go all over the place, but I do want to ask you guys how your experience with Heartland has been. How has it been being here in Indy with the world premiere last night, and how are you liking this experience here?
I mean, it's been an incredible experience. I think that we very early on had Heartland circled as a possible place to world premiere. We have friends who have, a friend of ours, Ballard Boyd, had a short at Indie Shorts this past year.
Nice.
A number of other filmmakers that we've worked with have come through here, and Heartland has a reputation of being special. And I hadn't been here before, but I knew that it was a place. It gets in the top 25 coolest festivals for Movie Maker magazine regularly for a reason. And then you get here and you go, oh, that's why. There's a level of hospitality. There's a level of, professionalism and community that is just, actually going back to what you're just talking about, right? One of the things about what's fun about making a film, in a smaller area, which is where we shot this film, is that same idea, right? How do you bring a professionalism to it, but also make it the best summer camp experience ever? Right? Yep. And how everybody feels like they're making the same thing for a purpose. And you feel that that same thing is echoed here, that there is a purpose behind Greg and his team, and everybody involved, and it shines through.
Nice. That's great to hear. I've been covering Heartland for years now, and it's such a nice yearly thing that I get to do. Not recently. I haven't been able to do as much as I'd like to with the fallout of the pandemic and everything, and now they're doing hybrid stuff. But just being able to be that's one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to be at the screening, because there's really no way to kind of replicate that experience. And this was a movie that I was very interested in. As people know, I'm a fan of science fiction, and of course, this was definitely on my radar. So to kind of circle back to talking about the film and everything, how did, and I apologize, these are all questions that are going to be reiterated from the Q&A, which I thought was lovely. You guys were great. How did the film come together? What was the genesis of this idea, and how did Sam and Emily come on board, and how did the ball get rolling with ReEntry?
So it started in 2018. I had actually, it started in 2009. So in 2009, I had a health scare that had a profound effect on my life, and the way that it affected out of it. I changed, right? Not completely, but significantly enough that it affected my relationships with my friends, with my family, with my wife, and out of that experience, it was constantly grappling with like understanding that I was different, and how did that orient to the people around me. And when the idea first came in 2018, it was kind of trying to think about, it sort of came out of that feeling of like, oh gosh, what's that like from the other side, right? And this film, is about this relationship where these people have changed over this event, right? And so that's where it started. But Dan and I have been friends for 20 years, and so it was about 3 weeks later that we went for a walk in New York, and where it kind of really started to take shape.
Yeah, I mean, at first, a lot of it was that the premise, as you can see, is like, it's not a sci-fi premise. It's actually a real life premise. And of course, great sci-fi is often a metaphor for, what I think of as a very specific instance of something that most people will never experience, but abstracted, it is an extremely universal feeling. And so we had that second part. We had this is a movie about a relationship in which someone changes, and we want to give the perspective of the other person. Great. But what would be the metaphor? And you can deliver lots of sci-fi metaphors for this, right? I mean, they could have gotten the cordyceps fungus in their brain, or they could have, I don't know, they could have been a doppelganger delivered by the NSA. Like, we have no limits there. You can functionally just say, let's change the person. They could be a shapeshifter from Mars. They can be anything. And so a lot of my task ended up being, we have this authentic experience in sort of Brendan's life, and he has a lot of really rich background and insight into the details. Now, how do we wrap a metaphor around that feels right, that feels sort of interesting, but also takes us past that into like Storyland, where he's now a character, and it's not going to end with the person becoming a director in Connecticut. It's going to end with somewhere else. They're different people fundamentally. So a lot of my questions, a lot of my insight, or rather my delving into his insights, were trying to suss out that part. And it was a long walk in New York City, and we were walking and thinking about every element of sci-fi, everything from deep fakes to Mars landings, and but landed on this pretty quickly, and then started to iterate from there.
Yeah, I think so much of one thing that we I think vibe on is this feeling that my favorite sci-fi is grounded, right? And it's almost like a very sort of like maximal premise that then just really you see the human fallout as result, right? And so I think that trying to keep it as simple of a setup, so as to like actually get into I think the best drama, which is just between people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the human element of it is on full display in the film. And in terms of science fiction, like that, it's one of the reasons why it's my favorite genre. It's just something where you can take this larger than life idea and use that to tell a story about human beings and human interaction, and even like social messaging, and it's a wealth of it's a deep pool to which you can tell stories from. And like I said before, I'm sure, and I will say continuously all over time, it's my favorite kind of science fiction, where it's not like just figuring out like, okay, the intricacies of like, okay, multiverse travel, like what does this mean? What does this do here? It's more like, okay, what does it do to the people? And it's just something that I'm a huge fan of.
Well, and I think that's a task of, the reality is that a multiverse story especially now in 2024, not less so in 2018 when we first came up with it, though, is that's traverse ground, right? We have Marvel movies and sequences of Marvel movies that are based on this idea. And so what the question you have to ask if you're going to kind of, stomp on the same ground that has $200 million budgets is, well, what's different? Why? And to me, I think about those movies and, actually, like, in many ways, this wasn't sort of, we were writing this long before this, but one of the movies that I feel like there's like a parallel in a weird way to is, spoiler alert, in Avenger Endgame, when Hawkeye comes home, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he sees his wife. Like, in many ways, that's our story, right? Is like, well, what was happening there?
Right.
And that to me was deeply interesting, is to figure out, like, there's a whole world of story there that is just as massive. Maybe paints with a finer brush than Marvel Multiverse story.
Right. So when is the lawsuit going to come out with Disney and Marvel for stealing your guys' idea?
Not at
Great
all.
idea. We're happy to talk, and anytime if they'd like to just. I think it's more of a collab that should be coming.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
We're more. We can play well with others. So
Exactly.
let us know.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
There we go.
Our feelings out there.
There we go. It's a wonderful story, and there was something in the Q&A that I just kind of, it makes me want to revisit the movie. Just this visual kind of kind of metaphor of the kind of altar of the doorway, which, like, right off the bat, like, the opening scene of the movie, I'm like, okay, this is my kind of movie, because there's a "Don't Panic" sticker, post-it note. I love that kind of Easter egg, and just the visual, like, look of the doorway, that it's transporting him to another universe and he's supposed to come back. It looks like, it didn't even register with me that it looks like an altar, or looks like a marriage place. Trellis. There we go. Yeah, I'm not married, so if you can't tell. But
You'll be
with that,
for a trellis. There
we go. I will keep that in mind. I'll have to put away some money.
Lights in there, and they get it even more expensive.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've heard horror stories of, like, ridiculous. Anyway, but just the visual style of that is just, it communicates so much right off the bat, and then, like, the ending is made all the more powerful because of that metaphor and because of that visual style. Again, this is kind of my deal. I don't really have a question. Just wanted to just heap praise upon it. But yeah, but, like, how
I think
do
there's
you
something,
have those?
I think there's something that I think, one of the tasks in directing is, once you figure what the story is about, how do you create frames that maybe not on first viewing, maybe not ever, right? But, like, sort of subtly push towards, echoing the work that Sam and Emily are doing on screen, right? How do we, and at the end of the day, this movie is a marriage story, right? It is about a marriage. And so, so you have this opportunity at the beginning of the movie where there's literally an exchange of rings, as he has to take off metal to go through the portal, and then you have this opportunity, and all the thanks goes to, the Windmill Studios team that, like, built the set, right? And then Mariana, our incredible production designer, who, like, took that idea and, like, placed it in space and made this incredible set on indie budget. And then Peter Fackler, our cinematographer, who found a way to light so we could shoot a minute-long oneer to start a movie that then ends in essentially a what looks like a couple on an altar about to get married. And so I think that's one of the fun tasks and primary tasks of a director is, how do we not make the camera the star, and not make anything else other than the relationship, the star, but how do we echo it in a way that that just kind of increases the feeling of what someone's feeling.
Nice. That it comes across really beautifully, of course. As I've said, it's a beautiful film. How do you manage, like in the process of creating the film? Like, I would presume it's obviously a very collaborative process, and things change throughout the course of it. How do you keep in mind, like, and this is more of just an abstract overall question, like, how do you keep in mind, like, the visual element of it, like keeping a close eye on, like, what the story you're telling is about, and how you want to visually represent that without, straying off from that, if that question makes any sense?
It does. No, it does. I think that, so this where, again, I want to thank Peter Fackler, who's our DP, and him and I, very early on, once he's on the project, and maybe even before, we're talking about, well, what's the language of this film, right? Like, what's the grammar of the camera? And we knew, even the decision on the aspect ratio is, we shot in 2:1, which is not quite anamorphic, but what it allows is for a wider frame, so we can have as many 2 shots as possible, right? How do we keep our characters on screen together, because it's about them together? So you're just constantly thinking, like, well, how do we do that? When do you go handheld? Why? And when do you let the camera linger? When do you cut away? And all those sort of things are, early decisions that you make. And then some of it is, like, you get to have the experience of, I think one of the really fun things is, Dan wrote a beautiful screenplay that I was constantly unpacking elements of it. I mean, here I read every version of every draft, and yet I'm shooting it and realizing something new in it. And I think, Dan has a background as a novelist, and so the amount of rich layers he can put in something from his years at his craft just asks you to try to figure out how do you make it more, while still keeping the story at the center and the characters at the center. I think one of those places that I was so excited by was, like, I feel like I didn't actually figure out one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the bridge sequence. And I won't say much more than that, sure, but because I would encourage people to watch it. But, like, I don't think I fully understood that scene until we started shooting it. And we were also shooting it as the sun was going down, making our day. We had to shoot, we decided to shoot during magic hours, so we had 3 hours to pull off this very complicated scene with visual effects and, multi-takes and having to move the camera and everything like that and making things match. And I just remember, like, the high of shooting that, but also, like, getting into the edit. And we also had an incredible editor on the film, Ben Stamper, and he, I came into he started editing during production, which we were very, very lucky to do. And so, there's a lot of sequences of the film where, he threw something against the wall, and then we changed it towards, like, some sort of match back towards maybe what was in my brain or whatever. But that sequence, like, honestly, if we changed 5% of it from his first cut, that would be an overstatement. And it's because he just, like, it flowed, and he got it. And so in many ways, it was really fun to just, like, see everybody else flex, and just be the first audience for them.
Nice.
That's
That's
also,
awesome.
Can I say that scene is also my favorite scene. It's sort of a sequence of a date in a relationship, and the way that people perceive things differently, and one of the reasons it's my favorite, it goes back to actually what Peter Fackler and Brendan were doing with the grammar of the visuals, something that you can never really put in the script unless you're really trying to direct from the page, and I wouldn't have even thought of. Which is, on the page you're saying, okay, I want these different perspectives, and so you've got her and you got him, and she's talking, and they're kind of like past each other and there's a moment, and this becomes actually a grammar in the film that it really is enriched as it happens more and more, which is the camera will do these transitions by going around someone's head. Yes. And so, from one side of her head, she's seeing, you're seeing something, and then the camera goes all the way around, you get the other perspective, and it's different. And that, just the idea of transitioning a scene by having the head of someone so close to the camera that they basically give you a black wipe kind of thing so that you go to the next. That's one of those like visual grammars that it can only be really done, by the cinematographer and the director to like bring all of that out. Because of course this movie is entirely about perspectives and the slight shifts of what's happening in our minds when these things are happening. And so that just drives that home, in a way that was, I thought, just brilliant, and it happens multiple times in the movie. If you keep an eye out for it.
Oh yeah, you guys talked at the Q&A about the hotel room scene and how that is a similar effect where the shift in the tone of the scene and what the characters are experiencing is in that kind of sweeping around the room, breaking that 180-degree rule, and it's spectacular because that's something that is in service to the characters, in service to the story, in such a visual and poignant way for the audience to really kind of take in what they're experiencing without having it be spelled out or anything like that. It's just really a really great kind of visual technique that's utilized in the film. And I also wanted to ask, in terms of the screenwriting and the script, one of the things that I really appreciate about it and really like about it is that on paper, like this could be any number of different types of stories. This could be like you said, it could be like a doppelganger from another universe thing. It could be like a suspense thing. But what the movie does so well is it navigates those, it flirts with those types of stories with just enough to where once there's a change to where it goes into something else that's always in service of the characters, always in service of the relationship, it's something that I think is maybe overlooked a little bit in films, but it's something that you have this expectation, and it's kind of just playing with those expectations while still servicing the characters and the story itself. So that was a little rambly. I'm not sure, but
I think you're on it exactly, right? So one of the things you could do in a film, if you, let's say like you were making, and it's perfectly fine to make, I love make all kinds of movies, but like, let's say you were trying to make a movie, because this is a movie in some ways it's in a minor key, right? And we've expressed this before. There's a person who goes and does this big experiment thing. He's the NASA astronaut. The husband is like the hero, so to speak, of a more traditional story. But this is actually Ellie's movie, right? It's her. It's all about what happens when you're the one who isn't going through and getting the parade and that sort of thing. And so, but if you were making the other version, right, you really could just like depict, you could kind of almost play by just like putting on the plate all the different genres to play with. I mean, why not make half of it animated? Why not, just like, then they go and shoot some aliens too. And that's actually kind of awesome. It's fine. There's nothing, but if you're trying to do this in the minor key and you're trying to kind of express the more grounded version, what you end up getting is the metaphor of this, which is what the characters are doing. If you'll note, like throughout the film, the characters are actually negotiating what kind of film they're going to be in. And there's always, as a result, the implication that there's another version of this movie could be a slasher film. Another version of this movie could be a true thriller with blood at the end. Another version could be a romance, and a version could be you solve it through hard sci-fi, whatever. And it's actually, I think, one of the elements again of going to the language of the film, the sound, the sound cues, the the framing, even the cuts of like how long you hold on someone's face, to whether it adds menace or it doesn't. That kind of language is being deployed throughout the movie to sort of let you negotiate also, as we always do with the text, of, okay, so what is this going to be? What's this version going to be? And I think one of the beautiful things, without giving any spoilers, I think, is where this couple negotiates the movie to go. Like, our version is going to be this. And in some ways, they are the ones forming that. They're talking about it. If you listen to the scenes, they're talking about, like, well, it's never this explicit, right? Like, I'm not gonna, but it's like, we can go this way. And I think in any relationship, that is the negotiation, right? So how are we going to end this thing? Is this going to end well? Is it going to end? Are we going to, where's this fight going to take us? And people are always making emotional overtures, sometimes gestures that end up riling the other person up, sometimes words that trigger exactly the right things, sometimes the softest, kindest just a little piece of grace that ends up solving the whole problem for the both of you, right? Like in a relationship, a fight is a negotiation, a conflict is a negotiation. That the film, I think, is doing that. You're always getting the negotiation of, this scene could go in a different world. This scene goes in a whole different direction, and we kind of get to live that.
Because every relationship, at its core, is it, like you said, it's a negotiation. The constant decision of, what are we doing with this relationship? Are we fighting? Are we on the same team? Are you my antagonist? Are you my partner? And I think that's to get to do that. And I think one of the things that was so fun, that was evident from the first draft that Dan wrote, was then getting to then carry that into sort of the subtle genre shifting that keeps happening throughout the film. And so it was a fun playground as a director to go like, oh, this sequence has this genre in it, and this sequence has this genre in it, and then how do you do it in a way that feels organic to the story, subtle. It doesn't feel like it's all over the place and just like jumping around and disorienting, right? Yeah. This movie has enough to, like, all the characters are disoriented, right? They're unmoored. But we want the film to kind of have this sort of flow towards the resolution that, in the best case scenario, and I hope and think this is the case, is that the film feels like it ends exactly how it's supposed to, but not in a way that you expected.
Yeah.
Right. And like, to give a key, without spoiling it, a key to the audience that are watching this, like, if you ever do watch it, that negotiation comes to a resolution in a moment that is, to me, pardon me, in a moment in which the characters are the most like actors and not character, in the sense that they are sitting in front of two mirrors, and two sort of classic mirrors that are like one would see in like an actor's dressing room. And in the story, they're sitting there and you're seeing them reflected, and it's one of the most beautifully shot sequences in the film. I think it's just like gorgeous. But also, if you're taking this theme, this idea of like, they're negotiating. How are we? They're negotiating at that moment what the movie's going to be as almost participants in the movie, and then they go on and there's a story, and it's just a very subtle little bit. But I always thought that was a very rich metaphor, because throughout it's been, it's almost as if the characters get to assert their will on the story, and they do, and they get goes exactly what Brendan said. So yeah, I keep an eye out for that scene.
Oh yeah, and it feels like it's kind of this interesting relationship with the audience as well, that we're experiencing their story playing out, and we're experiencing this scene that you're describing where they're basically leveling out or figuring out like where to go from there. And it just feels like this really intimate moment that we're a part of as the audience, because we've been on this ride with them for 90 minutes or so, and it's so richly layered in terms of their relationship dynamic, how it's been subtly shifting, that when we get to that moment, it's a very powerful moment in terms of kind of keeping us on the edge of our seat, really wondering like, how is this story going to shake out? How are these characters going to come out the other side of this thing? How is it going to work out? And it's the kind of storytelling that I love in terms of not only just genre movies, but just in general movies in general. And it's something that I feel is really in keeping with like the Heartland Film Festival spirit and everything, which is why I think it's perfect that you guys had your world premiere here. To kind of, we can kind of start winding down a little bit. But what's next with this? Have you guys like booked any more festivals? Is it going to be on the circuit for a while, or what's to come for ReEntry?
Yeah, so we're not yet ready to announce kind of some of the next steps on which festivals and things like that, but we'll definitely be at other festivals, and hopefully before too long we'll also have some information on it coming out more widely. Nice. We're sort of in those stages now of like trying to piece together the rest of it, and we're so grateful to kind of feel that Heartland put the sort of the wind in the sails of this film, because having the opportunity to screen with such a thoughtful audience was it's a filmmaker's dream. This started on a long walk in New York City, two of us, and then the first dozen times we read the screenplay out loud was just the two of us to each other. And then, you get this wonderful blessing and gift of having Emily and Sam and Noma and Maulik come along and say, and then you never have to hear your own voice do it again. And then, and all these sort of things happen along the way. But really, ahead of last night, maybe 10 people have seen this movie, outside of, the screeners, I guess. But so to have that shared experience with an audience that genuinely was invested in going on the journey with us, and feeling that in the room, I think that's the magic of storytelling and movies, is to have that shared communal experience. And to get that here, and at Newfield's, such a beautiful venue, was something that will, I think, live with us for a long time. Nice,
that's great.
Thank you. No, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you dare make me follow that up.
No worries. Yeah, well, congratulations, guys, on the film, and please pass my congratulations on to the rest of the team. It's a wonderful film. I'm so pleased to have been able to see it in the theater and be able to talk to you guys about it. And for everyone at home, as I said, it's going to be screening at Glendale on October 14th. That's this Monday, and virtually throughout the festival as well. That you can find ticket information at heartlandfilm.org. And yeah, do you guys have like social media that you want to promote to where they can follow the film or?
Yeah, so my Instagram is probably the best way to keep up with me, and it's at Brendan Choisnet, which is my name, which is hard to pronounce. So maybe Google ReEntry Film and then figure out how to spell my name, and then that's the best way to it. So yeah, at BrendanChoisnet.
Perfect.
I'm also challenging in name spelling. But yeah, you can find me through ReEntry, or Daniel Nayeri at any of the socials is going to be easy to find there. So.
Perfect. And of course, you can find me at Obsessive Viewer. I've got a little bit of an easier social media there.
Obsessive.
Oh, I've been doing this for 11 years now. Still could not figure it out.
2 and 1 or 1 and 2.
And
of course, it's 1 and 2 people.
Yes.
It's not embarrassment. That was terrifying every time.
Exactly. All right. Well, thank you guys so much, and congratulations again. Wish you all the best with going forward with the film, and yeah, thank you so much for your time, and I'll talk to you later, I guess.
Thanks so much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Cheers.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Crossing the felt ropes, watching from home on my TV, looking at all my eyes can see. They tell me I view obsessively.